Imagine Queen Elizabeth I. The image that floods the mind is one of almost divine power. We see Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, her face a pale, serene mask framed by a fiery halo of red gold hair. Her gowns are fortresses of silk and velvet, encrusted with a constellation of pearls and jewels. She is the monarch who faced down the Spanish Armada, who ruled with a razor-sharp intellect and an iron will, and who forged England into a global power. She was, in every sense, a living legend. But legends are built, not born. They are carefully constructed layer by painstaking layer. And beneath the priceless pearls, the thick, white makeup, and the perfumed gloves, Elizabeth Tudor was not a goddess. She was a woman haunted by the ghosts of her past, driven by a deep-seated fear of losing control, and obsessed with projecting an image of untouchable, ageless power. Her entire life was a performance, and her body was the main stage. To understand the real Elizabeth, we must look past the polished portraits and into the shadowy, candlelit reality of her private chambers. Here, the ideals of cleanliness were not about sanitation or health as we know them, but about status, symbolism, and a desperate battle against mortality itself. Her hygiene practices, so bizarre and stomach-turning to our modern sensibilities, were not acts of negligence. They were a calculated, complex, and ultimately dangerous part of the magnificent, terrifying illusion she built around herself. Let's peel back the layers of lead-based paint and scented silk to reveal the top 5 most disgusting hygiene practices of Queen Elizabeth I. The truth is far more complex and far more human than the legend allows. In the 16th century, sugar was not the common household staple it is today. It was the ultimate luxury good, a symbol of immense wealth and global reach. Known as white gold, it was imported at a staggering cost from far-flung colonies, a rare and exotic spice that only the highest echelons of society could afford. To serve sugar at your table was to flaunt your status in the most decadent way possible. And for Queen Elizabeth, it was a powerful addiction. Her love for all things sweet was legendary. Her royal banquets were a fantasy of confectionery delights. She feasted on marzipan sculpted into intricate castles and animals, fruits candied in shimmering syrup, and sweetmeats so drenched in sugar they would make a modern dentist faint. Even the flowers on her table, like violets and roses, were crystallized in a sugary glaze. For Elizabeth, this wasn't just indulgence. It was political theater. Every sugared almond and syrupy dessert was a declaration of England's burgeoning wealth and power, a sweet taste of the empire she was building. But this sweet obsession came with a bitter and shocking cost. The shocking truth is that this symbol of power was systematically destroying her from the inside out, starting with her smile. In an age before modern dentistry, the consequences were catastrophic. By the later years of her reign, the Queen's teeth were a horrifying ruin. Foreign ambassadors, in their private letters, described them with a mixture of awe and disgust. One German visitor noted that her teeth were very black, a direct result of eating too much sugar. A French ambassador reported that the decay was so severe she often suffered from agonizing toothaches, and that it was difficult to understand her speech, as she was speaking through a mouth of missing and rotting teeth. Her breath was said to be so foul that courtiers would subtly turn their heads or hold their own breath when she spoke. The irony is as thick as the syrup she consumed. The very substance that proclaimed her wealth was the source of her physical decay and discomfort. Yet, Elizabeth, known for her stubbornness and a paralyzing fear of pain, refused to have the offending teeth pulled. The idea of the crude, brutal dental procedures of the day terrified her. Legend has it that to convince her to have a tooth extracted, one of her loyal bishops, John Aylmer, had one of his own healthy teeth pulled in front of her just to show her that the pain was bearable for an old man. Even more bizarre was her dental hygiene routine. The queen used a homemade toothpaste, a special concoction of honey, sugar, and other sweet substances, believing the abrasive quality of the sugar crystals would clean her teeth. She was, in effect, polishing her rotting teeth with the very thing that was causing the rot. Perhaps the strangest twist in this tale of dental horror is how the queen's decay became a perverse fashion statement. In the highly competitive and imitative world of the Tudor court, every aspect of the monarch's appearance was a trend to be copied. As Elizabeth's teeth blackened, so too did the teeth of her noble ladies. To show they were wealthy enough to afford the same sugary diet as the queen, women would intentionally blacken their perfectly healthy teeth with soot and charcoal. A mouthful of black, rotting teeth became a bizarre and macabre symbol of high status. In Elizabeth's court, even tooth decay was a desirable accessory, a testament to the absolute power of her royal image. The famous quote, often attributed to Queen Elizabeth I, is as shocking as it is memorable. "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not." While historians debate whether she ever uttered these exact words, the sentiment perfectly captures the Elizabethan attitude towards bathing. In our age of daily showers and antibacterial soap, the idea of avoiding water seems primitive. But for Elizabeth and her contemporaries, a full-body bath was not a cleansing ritual. It was a risky, almost medical procedure to be undertaken with extreme caution. The prevailing scientific belief of the time was the miasma theory. Doctors believed that disease was spread by bad air or miasma, invisible, foul-smelling vapors that rose from filth and decay. They taught that immersing the body in hot water would open the pores of the skin, making a person vulnerable to these deadly miasmas, which could then seep into the body and cause devastating illnesses like the plague. To take a bath was to willingly invite disease into your very being. So, how did one stay clean? The answer lay in linen. The primary method of hygiene was the regular changing of undergarments, known as a shift for women. It was believed that the fine, clean linen fabric had the power to absorb sweat, dirt, and the body's humors, effectively drawing the filth away from the skin. Elizabeth was known to change her linen shift multiple times a day, a luxury only a monarch could afford. This was considered the pinnacle of cleanliness, a dry form of hygiene that kept the dangerous, pore-opening effects of water at bay. When she did decide to freshen up, it was rarely with a full bath. Instead, her handmaidens would perform a careful ritual, using cloths dipped in scented rosewater or vinegar infusions to gently dab at her face, neck, and hands. This was less about removing dirt and more about applying a pleasant scent and maintaining the pristine, pale appearance of her skin. On the rare occasions a full bath was deemed necessary, it was a monumental undertaking. Her palaces had no plumbing, no running water, and no built-in bathtubs. A bath required a team of servants to haul a massive wooden tub into her chambers. Dozens of buckets of water had to be drawn from a well, heated over a fire, and then carried bucket by heavy bucket to fill the tub. The bath itself was often infused with fragrant herbs and flowers, not for cleanliness, but to create a pleasant and supposedly therapeutic steam. It was an elaborate, labor-intensive ceremony that took hours to prepare. Bathing was a luxury event, not a daily habit. Elizabeth's avoidance of bathing was, therefore, not born of laziness but of a combination of the medical beliefs of her time and her obsession with control. Her body was the symbol of the nation, a sacred vessel that had to be protected at all costs. In her mind, water was a potential invader, a force that could weaken her and her image. By keeping her body dry and wrapped in the finest linen, she was building a fortress against disease and decay, preserving the perfect, untouchable image of the Virgin Queen. Of all the elements of Queen Elizabeth's iconic image, her stark white face is the most enduring. This was not a natural complexion. It was a carefully applied mask, and the primary ingredient was a deadly poison. The makeup she used was known as Venetian Ceruse, or the spirits of Saturn. It was a thick white paste made by mixing white lead with vinegar. For centuries, this was the most sought-after cosmetic by the European elite. Elizabeth would slather this toxic concoction over her face, neck, and chest, creating a smooth, opaque, porcelain-white finish that completely concealed her real skin underneath. This look was a powerful symbol of class. A pale, white face declared to the world that you were of noble birth, that you did not toil in the sun like a common laborer. It signified wealth, purity, and a life of leisure. For Elizabeth, who had survived a smallpox attack in her youth that left her with permanent scarring, the ceruse was a necessity. It was her armor, erasing every blemish, wrinkle, and scar, and presenting a flawless, unchanging face to her subjects and rivals. But this mask of perfection was slowly killing her. Lead is a potent neurotoxin. With each daily application, the poison was absorbed through her skin, wreaking havoc on her body. The long-term effects of Venetian Ceruse were horrific. It caused severe skin corrosion, eating away at the flesh it was meant to beautify. This created a vicious cycle. The more her skin was damaged by the makeup, the more makeup she needed to apply to hide the damage, layering poison upon poison. It also led to hair loss, digestive problems, and significant neurological damage. Historians speculate that her infamous irritability and bouts of melancholy in her later years were exacerbated, if not directly caused, by chronic lead poisoning. The toxicity didn't end there. To add a touch of color to her deathly white canvas, she used a bright red pigment on her lips and cheeks. This rouge was often made from cinnabar, a mineral that is a primary source of mercury. Like lead, mercury is a highly toxic substance that can cause memory loss, mood swings, tremors, and eventually, death. Every day, Queen Elizabeth I painted her face with a cocktail of deadly heavy metals. She almost never washed it off, preferring to reapply new layers over the old ones for days, sometimes even weeks at a time. When it was finally scrubbed off, it was done with an even more abrasive mixture containing eggshells, alum, and, of course, more mercury. Why would she do this? Because her face was not her own. It belonged to England. It was a symbol of her eternal reign, her divine right to rule. She had to appear ageless, flawless, and unchanging, a living monument to her own power. She was willing to destroy her own body to preserve the myth of Gloriana. The Virgin Queen was trapped behind a poisonous mask, a prisoner of the very image she had so masterfully created. In a world where bathing was a rare and risky affair, and where even royal palaces reeked of unwashed bodies and poor sanitation, scent was not a luxury. It was a weapon. For Queen Elizabeth, perfume was an essential tool in constructing her royal image, an olfactory shield that separated her from the stinking reality of her time. Her aversion to bad smells was so extreme that it was considered a physical ailment. Any unpleasant odor could send her into a fit of nausea or anger. To combat this, she lived in a constant cloud of powerful, sweet fragrances. This was not the subtle, delicate perfumery we know today. Elizabethan scents were heavy, potent, and designed to overpower, not enhance. The Queen's personal scent was a complex blend of musk, rosewater, and damask, but she employed a whole arsenal of fragrant objects. She carried pomanders, small, ornate metal orbs filled with a solid paste of ambergris, musk, spices, and resins. These were often worn on a chain from her waist, and whenever she encountered an unpleasant smell, she would lift the pomander to her nose and inhale deeply, replacing the stench of the world with her own controlled fragrance. Her clothing was a key part of this fragrant fortress. Her famous gloves, a symbol of her royal hands, were heavily perfumed with exotic oils. Her handkerchiefs were soaked in fragrant waters, and her gowns were stored with sachets of dried herbs and flowers. Even her hair, which was rarely washed, was stiffened with a mixture of sugar water and egg whites, then heavily dusted with scented powders made from orris root and other spices. This obsession with scent was another way she asserted her power and otherness. She was not just masking the smell of her unwashed body, she was creating a royal atmosphere, an invisible barrier that proclaimed her divine status. To be near the queen was to be enveloped in a cloud of expensive, exotic scents that no commoner could ever afford. It was a message to her courtiers: I am not like you. I do not smell of the mortal world. The irony, of course, is that beneath this fragrant illusion, the reality was quite different. Her unwashed body, her rotting teeth, and her toxic makeup were all contributing to odors that no amount of perfume could truly erase. The sweet scent of sovereignty was a meticulously crafted lie, a beautiful fragrance designed to mask a decaying truth. From the outside, Queen Elizabeth's palaces, like Hampton Court, Whitehall, and Greenwich, were marvels of Tudor architecture, symbols of grandeur and royal splendor. They were filled with golden ceilings, rich tapestries, and halls that echoed with music and the rustle of silk. But behind this beautiful facade, a disgusting secret festered. The royal palaces were effectively giant, luxurious cesspits. The 16th century had not yet solved the problem of human waste. There were no flushing toilets, no sewer systems, and no plumbing of any kind within the palace walls. The thousands of people who made up the royal court, nobles, servants, guards, and visitors, had to relieve themselves somewhere, and the solutions were shockingly primitive. The primary toilet for most was a simple chamber pot. These ceramic or metal pots were used in private rooms and then, in theory, were emptied by servants. However, in the crowded and chaotic environment of the court, they were often left in corners, under stairwells, or simply emptied out of the nearest window onto the grounds below. Courtiers were known to urinate in corridors, against tapestries, and even in fireplaces when they were not lit. The queen herself had a more sophisticated solution: the closed stool. This was an ornate, throne-like wooden chair with a padded, velvet-covered seat. But beneath the cushion was nothing more than a removable ceramic bowl. Attending to the queen on her closed stool was a position of incredible honor and intimacy, held by a high-ranking noble known as the groom of the stool. This individual was not a janitor. He was one of the queen's most trusted confidants, responsible for her most private moments, and privy to secrets whispered when her guard was down. The sheer volume of waste produced by the court was overwhelming. It was collected in large, open cesspits dug on the palace grounds. The stench, especially in the hot summer months, was unbearable. The lack of sanitation was a breeding ground for disease, attracting rats, flies, and other vermin. The situation would become so bad that the court had to constantly move. The queen's famous progresses, where she and her entire court would travel from one palace to another, were not just for political reasons. They were a necessity. They allowed one palace to be aired out and cleaned as much as possible, while the court went to befoul another. Imagine the ultimate paradox. The most powerful woman in the world, a figure of divine purity, living in a constant, inescapable battle with the filth and stench of her own kingdom. She could control armies and parliaments, but she could not escape the fundamental, disgusting reality of a world without sanitation. Her perfumed cloud was not just a symbol of power. It was a desperate, and ultimately futile, attempt to hold the very air she breathed captive. Queen Elizabeth I's hygiene practices, from her poisonous makeup to her sugar-rotted teeth and her perfume-drenched, unwashed body, paint a startling and deeply human portrait of a monarch obsessed with her own image. To us, her habits are a catalog of the grotesque. But to her, they were the very tools of survival and sovereignty. In an age where a woman's power was fragile and constantly under threat, Elizabeth understood that perception was reality. She could not afford to appear weak, old, or mortal, and so she built a legend. She sacrificed her health for a flawless face, endured agonizing pain for a sweet tooth, and lived in a perfumed fortress to deny the stinking reality of her own humanity. Her cleanliness was not of the body, but of the image, an image so powerful it has endured for over 400 years. She was the Virgin Queen, Gloriana, a monarch who seemed to defy time itself. But the price of that illusion was paid in private, in the quiet decay of her own body, a secret hidden beneath the gilded, beautiful, and ultimately suffocating cage of her own making. Thank you for watching Silent Atrocities. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more absolutely insane historical content that your teachers were too polite to mention, hit that subscribe button right now, share, and comment below. See you in the next one.